Hello and welcome to Economic Forum, a program where we discuss various issues affecting our economy, be they matters to do with commerce and industry, agriculture, culture, religion, international relations, diplomacy, and others. My name is John Masuo. International relations and diplomacy play a very important role in dialogue among nations. In fact, that dialogue is the one which then brings in economic development when these countries trade with each other and also find ways of doing business together. And it is in that context that today we have invited someone who is very much involved in international relations and diplomacy as a diplomacy strategist, and that is Robert Muganda. Robert, welcome to Economic Forum.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes. You do all these things through bringing together diplomats, journalists, business people, and so forth. What is the purpose of doing this?
I think just to nutshell it, our purpose is for sharing and exchanging knowledge. Knowledge is the key driver to to success, and that's what we're looking forward to be able to tap into the knowledge of other nations that are represented in Zimbabwe as we move on forward in improving the economy of the country. What we do primarily is we do business breakfast meetings where we bring in ambassadors, heads of UN missions, media, business executives to discuss some of the topical issues that influence economic development in the country. If I can give an example of one of these issues, the issue of climate change, where the discussion that we have led with is the role that the CEOs actually play in terms of pushing business to support climate change initiatives. This is the kind of roles that we play. At the international level, I think that's different offices that handle that kind of.
But one wants to believe that some of these discussions that you have also feed into what then happens at international levels. Let's look at how these meetings that you have with different diplomats and business people, and by business people, you're talking about local business people as well as those who come as visitors from other countries to explore investment opportunities. Let's look at how they are impacting on our economy.
Our role and the business breakfast, for example, that I spoke about, we usually we have representation from senior government officials, and as you rightly put, these then spark some of these activities that lead to the sideline meetings that you were talking about. Yes, the events themselves are very eye-opening. If I can give you another quick example, which our hope is that it will lead into sideline conversations even at the top level, is a business breakfast where we had the representation from the Malawian embassy and the Zambian embassy. And one of the key things that was being spoken about there is the ease of doing business, which we hope that will also come to Zimbabwe, and we open up Zimbabwe to be an investment destination where it's easy to register a business and to operate a business.
Let's talk about the people that you bring in. I've mentioned the diplomats themselves, and you also mentioned the top government officials.
Yes.
I've also mentioned the media and the NGOs. Are there others that you would have left out? And what roles do they play in making sure that these are not just talk shows?
As much as we try to be exclusive in terms of who participates in the membership itself, our results are designed to be very inclusive and very open to the general public. We do have events such as Open Walls, where we engage the embassies themselves to open their walls for the general public for issues to do with, for example, travel, education opportunities, and setting up business opportunities within the countries that are represented in the country. So it's not just about Zimbabwe, but it's an exchange of information and knowledge, even about investing outside the country.
I know many people might be asking that, how do we get to know about these? how do you then interact with the media? I know some of them are members of your community. Do you actually publish pamphlets? Are you active on social media so that people benefit from some of these meetings that you have?
Sure. There is a bit of a history to that. We are primarily born out of the media. This is how we have established ourselves as media diplomacy strategists. We're born out of the media. After spending a long time within the media field, there were calls from the embassies and business to say, you know what, you are connected to both of us, but we are not connected to each other. So why don't we connect each other now? This is how we bring in all these into a multi-stakeholder function, which brings in everybody from your diplomats, the NGOs, the government, the media that we have spoken about.
I know later on in the program would also want to understand what your role could be in bringing those who otherwise don't see eye to eye, to make sure that after some time they are able to talk, they are able to understand each other, so they qualify to meet on the sidelines elsewhere. Okay. We saw that our Excellency, the President, met Tony Blair in Rwanda recently. I'm sure there was some diplomatic engagement in order to lead to that kind of meeting, which is very important. That, as His Excellency said, that let bygones be bygones, as it were.
I think it's actually great to see positive developments that are born out of dialogue. It shows that the world is not at all hopeless, and we are excited about the developments that may happen in the future because of that kind of engagement. As our platform really is also about that, where people have to come together and share experiences, share knowledge. As much as people may have diverging views, but sometimes when people sit down and then discuss some of these things, you find that views can meet somewhere for the greater good.
That's Robert Muganda, who is a diplomacy strategist, and within their formations, they meet journalists, business people, diplomats, and so forth, in order to discuss issues that are of importance between our country and the international community. When we come back in the second segment, we are going to examine how Robert and others in their diplomatic engagements look at what we are as Zimbabwe, that we are open for business. So join us in the second segment. We are now in the second segment of Economic Forum, where today we are discussing international relations and diplomacy. And our guest is Robert Muganda, who is a diplomacy strategist. And what you do, Robert, as you told us, is that you bring together diplomats, business people, journalists, NGOs, and so forth, in order to discuss issues of mutual importance among different organizations or countries. Yeah. So we are open for business as Zimbabweans. How are you dealing with that in your engagements?
Okay. I think the most interesting thing that we have encountered so far is, and we've encountered quite a lot of them, was a breakfast where we had the Netherlands ambassador to Zimbabwe. And for me, what was very interesting is the positioning of the Netherlands as the garden of the world. Vice versa, the positioning of Zimbabwe as the breadbasket of Africa. There is a complementary role between the two countries. And with Netherlands, one of our leading trade positions is within the horticulture sphere. And the Netherlands ambassador spoke at length about the horticulture opportunities that exist here in Zimbabwe for people who are in that field, and also which exist for the Netherlands as the garden of the world. So you'd find that a lot of products that come from Zimbabwe getting into the Netherlands then spread throughout the rest of Europe, which is a very interesting value chain. that same breakfast meeting, he had representation from the local horticulture development council, which has been working for many years with the Netherlands embassy, and this is the kind of example that we like to see taking shape in the different sectors of the economy. That actually shows the open for business mantra for the nation. And then another conversation that we had was also based on the textile industry here in Zimbabwe, looking at the possibilities that also exist within Turkey. Turkey is known for its textile industry. And one of the most interesting aspects, we all wear suits, and most of the suits that we are wearing here in Zimbabwe, which is coming out from that discussion, are coming from destinations such as Turkey. But what can be affecting the clothing industry here in Zimbabwe is the ambassador at the time, he introduced a new word, and the new word was kukarism. If we move beyond kukara, as he put it, we would see that our textile industry can grow. Those are the kind of dialogues that then we have, and then we see the opportunities that exist between one nation that is represented here in Zimbabwe.
What is interesting, you've just given two important examples from Europe, but we actually had a policy which we called the Look East policy. Say something about what your dialogues have come up with regards to our Look East policy.
We've had one breakfast with Japan, right? Which was also very interesting because the Japanese context is, we're coming in from, I think we had about 30 Japanese companies that were invested in the country at a point, which has now gone down to 2. And
any reasons?
But it is the operating environment. It's no secret that the operating environment has gone through a lot. But the interest from Japan, which came out from that conversation, is that there is an interest to increase investment in the country, and there is also hopefulness that there is a motion towards the right direction in terms of creating the environment that will bring back those companies. But in terms of other interesting things about the nation being open for business that we have come across within the dialogue sphere that we have involved ourselves in is intra-Africa investment. Our last conversation was with Malawi and Zambia, and just looking at the opportunities that exist. Naturally, everything we're doing is to see the opportunities that exist between the two, between ourselves as a nation and the nations that are represented in the country. And intra-Africa trade and investment is actually looking like something that we really need to focus on as African nations, because there's a lot of possibilities that exist there. Exciting examples that were coming in were the ease of doing business in Malawi and Zambia, especially when it comes to registering companies for African investors. And I think those are examples that we may need to quickly adopt as a nation.
That it should not be cumbersome.
Yes. I think this thing has been spoken about for a very long time, that it takes a long time, even for a local. I've tried several times to register my own business. It takes a long time. But it looks like there is templates that are already out there that we can just pick up and try and implement here in the country.
That's Robert Muganda, who is a diplomacy strategist, and today we are talking about the role of diplomacy in different engagements, be they local, regional, and international, so that we improve our economic relations. When we come back, we are going to be looking at SDGs and other issues that promote economic development. So join us then. We are now in the third and final segment of Economic Forum, where today we are discussing diplomacy and business. What opportunities can be discussed with ambassadors, business people, NGOs, journalists, locally as well as in other countries, and also those engagements that happen at different meetings, where on the sidelines of those meetings, our presidents, particularly His Excellency, our president, is able to take up some of the discussions having started here at home. And we have here our guest, who is Robert Muganda, a diplomacy strategist. And in the final segment, let's look at the role of SDGs. Is it something that you discuss at your different meetings, and for what purpose?
This is a key focus area for much of our constituency, the embassies, the NGOs, and business. And it's an area also, I think, where we need to step up as a nation in terms of catching up on the SDGs. If I can give you an example of the issue of climate change, where we still seem to be falling a little short in terms of attaining the goals for that. So it's a really a huge focus area. We've had dialogue around climate change, which was headlined by the Australian ambassador to Zimbabwe, and participation also from the UN agencies such as FAO, and also a key example in terms of leading the race on climate change is Rwanda. In Africa is Rwanda. Rwanda has come in and also given concrete examples of how we can push for climate action. So it's really a key area for most of our constituencies. We've also seen participation, which is very encouraging, from the business sector, particularly the mining sector, who have set up models that for business to push for climate action. And then financial institutions, which is very positive. We've seen financial institutions coming through with the ESGs, support for the ESGs. A lot of sectors seem to be ready to talk about climate action. I'm not sure about the implementation side of things, which is where we hope that we move from being just talk shops and actually going into the ground and implementing. But climate change is not the only thing that we focus on in terms of our dialogue. If you see drug abuse, for example, is really ravaging, particularly in the ghettos. We've seen even from the music side of things, there's a lot of conversation about that. As a club, we do we work with cultural ambassadors to talk about these issues that relate to drug abuse. We also have a focus on creating safe spaces for women in the workplace. These I'm just giving an example of topics of dialogue that are in the near future.
In fact, you are giving them because they are important to economic development.
Yes.
If we destroy our environment, then at the end of the day, it will be very difficult to continue with our economic growth.
Yes. Yeah. I just a day ago, I saw a picture of a heavily melted traffic light, and the caption on it was to say, for those that still have doubt that climate action is actually important topic for discussion, look at this. And I think it's things that we don't take seriously because they're not affecting us on a day-to-day, but they've got these long-term effects. But with the work that is being done by the non-governmental organizations, the embassies, and some businesses, to mainstream these conversations about things like this, which are normally considered to be boring subjects, be it climate change, be it drug abuse, be it safety for women in the workplaces, in fact, all the SDGs. And one of the things that we're really cracking our heads with our work with sports and cultural ambassadors is how to mainstream these conversations.
Yes, tell us more about sports diplomacy that you also promote within what you do.
Okay. Apart from the diplomats that we have, the best ambassadors that you have for any nation are your cultural and sports people. We've got soccer players like Marvelous Nakamba who are doing very well in other countries, and they have a lot of knowledge and experience that they can share with upcoming sports personalities in the country. So we have opened ourselves to working with sports personalities. As I've already mentioned, we are working with foundations like the Marvelous Nakamba Foundation, and we are also in talks with foundations such as the Tag Rugby Foundation, just to be able to create those partnerships where the sports personalities become ambassadors for some of these topical issues, to spread to people who may otherwise not follow conversations at the breakfast meetings, for example, level, but would rather have the dialogue packaged in a different way.
And Robert, this is something that you're also encouraging among those who are making it in different countries outside sport, that they can also be ambassadors in their own disciplines, yes. And therefore you bring them in, including the cultural ambassadors who go out there. They should bring something in. Is it something that you're doing, and how are you doing it?
Yeah, like I've already highlighted, we have some cultural and sports ambassadors that we are working, mm-hmm. But we also open for
new ones.
We invite people who have great ideas and feel that they may have the experience locally, internationally, wherever we are represented as a nation. Mm-hmm. You get in touch with us, and we keep the dialogue going.
Catch them young. You are also encouraging young people to know about diplomacy and promote it. Very briefly, how are you doing that?
Well, we are introducing a Young Ambassadors Club for the tertiary. It's basically we're teaching etiquette, diplomacy at a young age, so that they are the ones who will be taking up the baton after us and pushing the diplomatic agenda.
Very good idea indeed,
yes.
To catch them young. That's Robert Muganda, who was our guest today on Economic Forum, and we were talking about the role of diplomacy in promoting economic development, and how Robert and company have also been bringing business people, journalists, NGOs, and diplomats to work together in order to promote dialogue. I would like to remind you that if you want to get in touch with us, you can do so on the numbers that are showing on your screen. And if you have missed some of our episodes, you can watch them on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. And I also thank our production crew for today. This is John Masuku.